Is it time to drop Jaylen Waddle? That and more this week on the couch. Matt Kelley, the pod father, come to you for some advice. You can ask for a favor later. Is it time to drop Jaylen Waddle?
We're live?
We're live. Well, we're recording. They're live. As far as they know, we're live.
We're live. You and I are live right now, right here, right now in
Yeah.
the universe. Right now, we're live.
On the couch. Yeah.
We are recording. I'm on the couch right now.
You got it.
Oh, this feels
Get comfortable.
Good.
Just watch it. I can't claim what's in the cushions, you know.
Yes. This feels great. This is a comfy couch.
Yeah.
I'm having a good time.
Yeah.
This is quite the moment. This is a big moment. I'm not dropping Jaylen Waddle. I think you could play him this week. Patriots give up fifth most fantasy points to opposing wide receivers. This is a get right game. This is a home game. I know it's going to be Achane, right? I know that's what it is. He only has one touchdown this year, 8 fantasy points a game. This is not impressive. I get it. Like, we've been burned. But he's had 3 straight 1,000-yard seasons to start his career.
Mm-hmm.
He gets there in all kinds of different ways. Rookie year, didn't even get to 900 air yards, but he was doing it with yards after the catch. Then he was doing it with air yards the next year. So then this is a Terry McLaurin skill set. I'm not aware that he's playing through a major injury that's really going to hamper him. I've watched him play. He looks just as explosive as the Tua is certainly a diminished quarterback. When you look at the air yards per attempt for Tua, it's down actually to a low point in his career. But we've seen Jaylen Waddle thrive on short and intermediate routes already. And wide receiver, it's a volatile position. Wide receivers can go weeks just getting unlucky because they just get so few bites at the apple in any given game that it's just one of those things. Like, you could string together 4 or 5 games where your output is below average for whatever reason, even if you have a high target share. The problem is he only has 47 targets this year. 47 targets, that ranks number 52 in the NFL on Player Profiler. His target rate, targets per route run, 17.9%. That's number 71 in the NFL. He's clearly not right. Like, the target rating isn't bad. The target rating on Player Profiler, which looks at the depth of target and the target accuracy, is top 10. So everything would suggest that he's just a bad football player. But 3 years of data tell us that he's good. The NFL scouts picked him top 10. I didn't think that was a good idea at the time. And then I'm like, I'm proven wrong. And 3 years go by and it's like, all right, well, I guess he is a top 10 talent. Fine. Right. It just felt weird for him and Jamar Chase to go adjacent. I was like, one guy is not like the other, but fine. Top 10 pick. One more week. I think one more week.
Yeah. I think that's where we are. Like a exclamation point, I would say.
Didn't we just go through this with Jonnu Smith? Jonnu Smith is a top 3 option in this passing game.
Yes.
It's consolidated down to Jonnu and Hill and Achane and Waddle. But in terms of the actual receivers, the non-running backs, Jonnu Smith was always an interesting streamer with upside week in, week out, and then he pops off at the 28 fantasy points. It could easily happen this week with Jaylen Waddle. Why not? Why not? Stranger things have happened, man.
Oh, gosh. I mean, one of the ways that you can immediately tell.
Is he bad now?
No, that's the whole thing, right? I was going to say the exclamation point is he didn't forget how to play football. He didn't just forget how to play football. We know he's good. And I think that you're right that that's the compelling place to start with the pro argument. And where often, eventually, you wait long enough, and it will bear out that good players will continue to be good. However, on the other side, because you mentioned Jonnu Smith, I wonder if he's working against structural issues that he would have to be just transcendent to overcome at this point, because you insert Jonnu Smith and Malik Washington, who is in his own right adding an element to this offense. And then you mentioned, I think, the key that the depth of target, what was awesome about this offense, and look, I'm big on sorting at an offense level in the summer when we're drafting. Like, I want to get in on these offenses, that where we're going, we don't need roads offenses. Detroit, Baltimore, and so on. We thought maybe Kansas City would return to being one of those offenses. Miami certainly looked like one of those offenses when Tua was out there, but they're just not that offense now. They're not creating the spacing. The big plays downfield aren't coming. Defenses aren't scared of Miami anymore. And now if you're taking, instead of a more concentrated target tree, a wider target tree, but like you said, one more week, and I think that's the key. And I don't know what trade deadlines are in leagues and things like that, but I think that after this week, people will stop trying. But this week is one that could be a get right week, because New England, I guess their plan was to put their best corner on Demarcus Robinson last week and let Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua kind of run free. So, I mean, this could be a Jaylen Waddle game, but if it's not, then all of a sudden, Matt, it flips, and it's like, well, what's it going to take for you to start him, right? What's it going to take for you to bench him or drop him? And I'll mention my man Paul Charchian and the term that he coined, sabotage drop. I think and I'm going to step through some players with you, Matt, that I think that we have to consider. Like, are they possible sabotage drops?
So you drop him, someone else picks him up, and then it becomes an anchor on their roster.
Right. It becomes their problem. And they're agonizing over, can we really, I mean, he was a second round pick. It's the first 3 years, all this same stuff. Right. So there's a lot of potential players like this. And I think it's fun to think about. Let's talk about in that same draft, that same team, DeVonta Smith. What about DeVonta Smith? Because same thing, you insert J.L. Goddard, you've got Saquon Barkley, you've got a low volume pass offense. Is this structural stuff? But unlike Jaylen Waddle, he's made some big plays downfield this year, so he can overcome it. But will he?
Well, he's the case. He's the case. If you just redeal the deck, right, and or the order of games, like it could just be random chance that all of Jaylen Waddle's dud games were front loaded, and you redeal the deck, you reshuffle the schedule, and then suddenly we're not talking about Jaylen Waddle like this, but we're talking about it like with DeVonta Smith. DeVonta Smith is in an even worse situation in that the receivers ahead of him are even better than they are for Jaylen Waddle. And Tua does not suck as many pass attempts out of the offense as Jalen Hurts. And this week, this is the worst week. What are you going to do? You're going to start Keenan Allen? Keenan Allen's dust. Keenan Allen
right.
is the least efficient wide receiver in the NFL this year. I mean, it is over. Look at these games, Sig.
Yeah.
Look at these slates. This is a horror show. Look at Vikings Bears.
Yeah.
This is hell on earth.
13-10.
Yeah, I'm in hell. I'm in hell with these games. Look at all these game totals. 40 points, 37 points, 39 points. Look at all these buys. We got Cincinnati, Buffalo, Atlanta, New Orleans, the Jets, all these receivers on bye. What are you going to do?
Yeah, that's fair.
Who are you going to start? Who do you really want to start?
Yeah, no, that's fair. I mean, it gets into, where this will start to get interesting as we shake things up. And I think you're pointing out something. The weather's getting colder. The point totals are going to get smaller. As it is, the NFL has been more run heavy, and there's been much more value concentrated in running backs and wide receivers. And that might continue and get to the point where we start looking at guys. And I think under the DeVonta Smith heading, you've got guys you start considering like Quentin Johnston or Joshua Palmer, or even, take your favorite pick of the Browns wide receivers. Where at least
you're gonna start Judy over Waddle this week?
Well, but the thing is, and look, I mean, I'm not in the Steelers matchup, and the thing is, we don't know where Cleveland's pass offense is. Like, we only have seen them in like really easy matchups or really hard matchup where he did come around at least in garbage time. But this is going to be a real litmus test because Cleveland has a tough stretch coming up. I think they have Pittsburgh again. They've got Denver and Kansas City coming up. So we might bail. This is another one of those litmus test weeks. Like, are we going to bail on our Browns wide receivers? Well, let's see what happens on Thursday. But at least Judy has done something recently. That's the thing. And this is
the problem. That's the problem with wide receiver. They're so volatile. You get caught in this recency bias. You're like, well, he went off last week. there's a receiver. There's one receiver that I think has had a couple nice weeks that I think is going to parlay that again this week. It's like not point chasing to
Mhm.
play Jamison Williams. There's a
Oh
few
gosh,
games,
yeah.
right? There's a few games on the schedule this week that are lighting up,
Right,
and
right, right.
there are a few games that you want to run and hide from. You want to run away. Chiefs Panthers. Are you really that excited to play Xavier Worthy? That's a trap, man.
Yeah, yeah.
That's going to be like 17-3. You don't want any part of that game. Get out of here with that
Right,
game.
right.
I want the shootouts, right? You think Titans Texans? That's not exciting at all.
Mhm.
I couldn't be less excited about that game. I am very excited about Ravens at Chargers. I'm very excited that the Harbaughs want to shut down the other running game. So it's going to be brother on brother. You can't run against me. I can't run against
Yeah,
you.
yeah.
Derrick Henry goes for like 5 fantasy points. And meanwhile, it's the Zay Flowers, Quentin Johnston, Rashad Bateman, hopefully Lad McConkey's healthy. Like, fire these guys up. So there are some passing games that are going to get fired up. The Rams passing game against the Eagles passing game. This is a week to play DeVonta Smith, as we talked
Yeah.
about. 49ers Packers. These passing games are going to get fired up. This week, I think wide receiver 1 is in play for Jayden Reed. Jayden Reed on Player Profiler has the most explosive plays of any wide receiver in the NFL. This is a home game against a team where that's the area of weakness for the 49ers that are secondary. I see their passing game getting consolidated and Jayden Reed finally getting 7 or 8
Mhm.
targets, which is what he deserves every week. So I can see Jayden Reed 7 for 110 and 2 touchdowns, very much in his range of outcomes. But I think the highest scoring game of all, I do believe, based on what we saw with Anthony Richardson,
Mhm.
which was one of the great performances of the year,
Yeah.
which was Anthony Richardson saying, you know what, you capricious owner, you can't break me. Okay. You're not going to break me. No one's going to break me. Fuck it. We'll do it live.
Sorry,
We'll
Joe.
do it. You're going to send me to MetLife against that defense? Okay. Against Sauce Gardner? Okay. We'll see what happens. Set me up to fail. We'll see what happens. They win. Now I get home games. And yes, the Lions defense has been good, right? No
Mhm.
Aiden Hutchinson, no problem. But I think that if there was a game against the Lions that we could finally see shoot out, which we've been waiting for. Hey, they're going to put up 50 points. What about the other side of that game? What about the run backs?
Right.
Are not getting there against the Lions. This so feels like it will. The Colts are 7.5-point dogs. I love the Colts this week. I love betting the Colts this week. Even the Colts money line is a great sort of a Hail Mary bet
Mhm.
this week. And these receivers, the Josh Downs, the Alec Pierce,
Mhm.
cheap DFS play, fringe guy to plug in at flex. You could plug in one of these between the tackles grinders, right? You might think, Kareem Hunt might fall into the end zone. He might get me 10 fantasy points. My method is that I prefer the upside wide receivers in PPR leagues in my flex. So I'd rather flex in Alec Pierce, hoping for that 80-yard touchdown. This game could really shoot out. We're so accustomed to the Lions just
Mhm. Mhm.
shutting down opposing defenses, but Anthony Richardson showed something last week, which I'm very excited about, and I think that there is no defense that can solve him. I think he's going to give them a problem. If he
Right.
plays anything like he did last week, it's going to be fireworks, man.
Yeah, this is really exciting. Cease and I recorded this morning, and we were previewing this game. And what's exciting about this is because the Lions offense is so efficient. Like I said, you basically have to plan on scoring 40 to beat the Lions. Like you have to come up with a game plan to score 40. If you want to legitimately beat the Lions, and Shane Steichen is willing to do that. That's what's great. Shane Steichen will let Anthony Richardson freewheel, throw deep, barnstorm, like the Red Baron in the like you said, a shootout where okay, the Lions just went down the field and scored in 6 plays. Let's see what the answer is. And the Lions defense, while on paper they're very good, it's against Tennessee and against Jacksonville, against teams like that.
Look who
Okay,
they've played even
right.
recently. They got
Yeah.
Mac Jones. They've been
Yeah.
pretty lucky.
Yeah. But you're getting Anthony Richardson at a point of his highest confidence yet as a pro when you're telling him like just go out there and do what you do. Like you answer them. And it's a really fun, we're on the couch. So from a psychological point of view, it's really fun to think about this idea now that maybe start them right away. No, make them sit. Well, how about start them right away, but then at a point that is necessary, like parenting, right? Like say like, nope, I'm going to step in. We're going to have a little timeout here for you to think about things before you go back out there. And someone actually pointed out to me when I was joking about it, that is in high stress situations. And I don't know, don't source me on this, but I guess like military training and things like that, that is actually like a technique. First drop you in without even know what you're doing, stressed out, overloaded, and then pull back and say, now let's talk about what happened. Let's learn about it. And then you go back in. And I guess, there's no one size fits all answer, Matt, but this is striking. In the years that we've been paying way too close attention to everything that happens in the NFL, it's hard to think of another striking change where we're really thinking about Anthony Richardson. A few weeks ago, is he going to start for another team? Is he done with the Colts? Does this a sign that they're moving on from him? Does it mean Shane Steichen's going to get fired? To like, oh no, everything is very much back on track. And what a moment for a game against Detroit to happen. And for fantasy, what I really like what you did though, Matt, is doing this exercise of what are the range of outcomes for how this game could go. And some of these games, like you said, I want to take a moment out because we're on the couch to mention, because you did, and I'd like that you hooked into this right away, that the Harbaugh matchup is back, brother versus brother. We had this in a Super Bowl down here in New Orleans when the lights went out. But we got sibling rivalry, right? I mean, actually, sibling rivalry fits into your analysis of how this game is going to go. And I think you did it very appropriately, saying like, well, these guys have grown up together. So that's going to affect how this game could unfold. And the other thing that's really fun about this is they couldn't be more different, really. I mean, they really are very different. They're not like two versions of a person. They're completely different people, and it's reflected in their coaching styles. When did Jim Harbaugh become so likable, by the way? But this is really fun.
It's just taken him a long time.
It has. Although you go all the way back to when he was a quarterback for the Colts, he was likable back then too. He seemed just kind of like a surfer dude. Like he just seemed totally laid back. And then he seemed not at all laid back. Now he's back to being laid back. So that's fun. But I want to ask you about this exercise of how these games going to go. Because I think you're absolutely right. Like Kansas City loves winning ugly. They love winning ugly. Like that's game script A. Plan A is winning ugly.
Bad.
Yeah, that's what they like to do. So you're like, oh, Carolina, they're going to, this like, if it's Detroit versus Carolina, you're penciling in 45 points. But like Kansas City, like you said, if they can win 17 comfortably, they're happy with 17. So you're thinking about these games and you're getting into the head of the coaches and you're thinking about the style of the team. What do you do with Arizona, Seattle? Because sometimes NFC West games can be like 6-3 between these teams. They could be like 6-3 or they can be 38-35. And I want to go back to San Francisco.
The Vegas has said that they don't know. 47.5.
Yeah.
If the total is 47.5, that's them saying, yeah, this could go either way.
Yeah.
They could go for 60 between them, or this could get dragged. When I saw that, it seemed low to me. And then I was like, yeah, this is a possibility. But I like that it's in Seattle. I think this feels like a shootout to me. This feels like one of the few games you really want a lot of exposure to. Jackson Smith and Jigba, what another 11 targets. Oh. He was 10 for 11.
Breathtaking.
And I just realized it's the best. It's so much better. If you look at the math, it's so much better to have an above 90% catch rate that's below 100. So if your catch rate is between 90.1 and 99.9, that is so much better because that necessarily means you had 11 plus targets in order to get necessarily means in order to get a number in that range.
Fantasy teams with a wide receiver with 290.
You could just be 2 for 2. You're 100% catch rate. Big deal. But a 91% catch rate, whatever it is, so good. So cool to see that. Like number one in slot routes. Like he's also what's interesting about Jackson Smith and Jigba is he's near the top of the league in yards after the catch. So I love these explosive slot receivers, and he's a volume slot receiver. A lot of these guys, it's really cool. Like Julian Edelman was quietly explosive. There's been some slot receivers that have been quietly explosive. He's not that quiet because he was a first-round pick. Edelman was like a seventh-round pick, and he went to Ohio State, and everyone thought he was the next guy, and then it was
Yeah.
Harrison. So, yeah, he is what we thought he was. And Metcalf comes in. Metcalf now suddenly, he looks like an alpha, but now kind of a beta. He's kind of the other guy in this offense. I'm excited about this game. I think this is even a game where Tyler Lockett gets there. That's what's going to happen. This game is screaming out where it's Michael Wilson and Tyler Lockett. There's a big points, right?
Mm-hmm.
You want to play Geno Smith, you want to play Kyler Murray. But in terms of the stacking, you're not sure. This is where a guy that puts Michael Wilson in his lineup wins the Millie Maker, or a guy that puts Tyler Lockett in his lineup wins the Millie Maker. That's what this game feels like to me.
I think you're right that there's a lot more ways that we get to a high-scoring game than a low-scoring game. Arizona's offense was blossoming before their bye. It just happened that their defense was also playing well, so they didn't really have to keep the foot on the gas in the second half. You're seeing Kyler Murray really get it. It seems like he's finally comfortable in the scheme, and they're using Marvin Harrison in a way that shows they actually grasp what he does well. The running game is great, and I could actually even see Arizona jumping out in this one if they keep playing the way they did going into the bye. But if Geno Smith falls behind early, well, he'll just keep throwing haymakers. So even if Arizona jumps out to a lead like they did, even though it's on the road, well, then Geno Smith, and you mentioned Jackson Smith and Jigba, and I would definitely want to come back to that. But if Seattle getting a big road win, because the beautiful thing here is the NFC West is totally, truly up for grabs. Matt, it's so rare that we're going to week 12 and any one of these 5 teams and 4 teams could win the division. I say 5 because I'm thinking about 5 wins, 3 teams with 5 wins, 1 team with 6 wins. And it's a beautiful thing because it's like whoever plays the best for the last 7 weeks of the season is going to win the division. And that's kind of how it should be. That's justice in a way. And it starts for both of these teams in this game. And I do think it's going to be quarterback play. It's going to be offenses. But Jackson Smith and Jigba, man, not only do I think it's not controversial to say he's a top 10 wide receiver going forward, again, I think it's harder to make the case he's not after what we've seen, and that he has a quarterback who is going to, you saw it last week when he needs a play, when Geno Smith needs a play, it's going to be Smith and Jigba. And this is one of those things where I think people need to adjust during the season. If we were drafting today, then Jackson Smith and Jigba should be like a second, third round pick. And I don't think that's controversial, but I think because people have trouble adjusting in season, they might see that as controversial. Do you think it's controversial?
No, and I think Marvin Harrison is a big reason for the success of Kyler Murray.
Mm-hmm.
Marvin Harrison's got some interesting metrics, man. He's got a 37% dominator rating, so he's accounting for a huge share of this passing game. He's got the 6 touchdowns are a big reason for that, 18% touchdown rate. So it seems unsustainable. So on the surface, his fantasy points seem unsustainable. But then actually, his expected fantasy points is like 2.3 per game higher than his actual. And why is that? Because they're not connecting on these deep balls. These deep balls are going to connect. He's number 7 in the NFL in air yard share. So anytime a rookie player has an over 40% air yard share, that is a huge number, especially for a rookie. So it's an interesting thing in that the touchdowns have really buoyed his production, but there's nothing that says that they're not going to continue just with the deep passes, actually more deep passes connecting. So I think that he's going to actually do better. Anytime you're top 10 in the league in air yards as a rookie, I'm incredibly intrigued. So if guys, he's top 10 in air yards, but number 37 in fantasy points per game, even with a very high touchdown rate. Just think about that for a second. Think about what that means. He's doing well with contested catches, 47% contested catch rate. But you look at the true catch rate, 80%. His actual catch rate's only 55%. That's because the catchable pass rate has been so low. It's just been very unlucky. He's not getting the target separation downfield that we would like to see. So some of these get a lot of passes broken up, and some that just aren't accurate enough, eventually it's gonna break his way, and he's gonna have a big one, a big spike week. We had a big spike week 2
Right.
against Tre'Davious White and the Rams. Okay, but that was 8 targets, some a couple touchdowns, only 4 catches. So he has not had more than 6 receptions in a game. That's what I'm talking about. He's already had 2 top 5 finishes and yet to break 6 receptions in a game. He's going to have an 8-catch game, and that's going to be a massive spike week where he's going to be. I think he has one more week in him where he's the number 1 overall wide receiver. It could be this week, but it's interesting how he's the opposite player from Jackson Smith and Jigba. So the one thing that he's not doing at all is giving any yards after the catch, and that's Jackson Smith and Jigba, no air yards, all yak. Marvin Harrison, his teammate at Ohio State, no yak, all air yards. Fascinating stuff.
Well, and this comes back to also players being used to their strengths. And I think that roughly matches up with strengths. But the beautiful thing with Smith and Jigba is also 2 games ago, you saw them using him as a vertical receiver with much success. So he can add that. With Harrison, and you laid out the case really well, that concealed in his numbers is a sleeping giant. One of the numbers I saw from Matt Harmon, reception perception. What's up to my nephew? 16.7 or 16.9% double team rate on Harrison, which is just absurd for a rookie.
Well, why do you think they're deflecting so many passes that are passed his way, and it's harder for him to get separation when there's multiple guys on him?
Right, which shows respect. I mean, it just shows how important the defense sees him as a player to neutralize. And I think the next highest was like 6. Malik Neighbors was like at 5 or 6% or something like that. So like incredible respect shown. But if Kyler Murray in this offense is starting to find that he's hitting Trey McBride in the seam, like you mentioned, Michael Wilson, right? Some of these other, or the running game is loosening things up because James Conner can really get in a groove. Trey Benson was really coming on right before the bye. Then that's going to loosen things up. Then what does that tell you if Marvin Harrison Jr. can start seeing more single coverage down the stretch because the Arizona offense and Kyler Murray's forcing them to play 11-on-11 football? Now things can start to really unfold. And you mentioned, and I just like to put these kinds of dramatic punctuation marks on these back and forths because I think it's really good. You mentioned was week 2, and it was really a quarter. It wasn't even a game. It was just a quarter that Marvin Harrison. Remember, after week 1, what was it? His top miles per hour was like 16. It was like, well, no wonder he didn't work out. He's a bust. I can't believe people thought this guy was so good. And then he comes out in the week 2 in the first quarter, like, yeah, he is actually that good. That was against the Rams. You say he could have one more game as the number 1 wide receiver. Week 17, fantasy championships. The Rams. So, yeah.
You'd almost wish that he would be locked up with an alpha corner. Like, guys like Trey Brown, they're going to have to bracket him. So
right.
that's the one. That's why I'm thinking it might be a Michael Wilson week, is that the way that Seattle has really suppressed fantasy production from wide receivers is, by playing great team defense. And that doesn't bode well for Marvin Harrison. When he does get man coverage, which is rare, 171 routes against zone, only 81 routes against man. When he does get man coverage, Murray locks in on him immediately. 44% target rate against man coverage, number 3 in the league. So, and he's very successful against man coverage. It's just they don't give it to him.
Yeah.
Which it's going to be. It could be Trey McBride. It could be Michael Wilson. But that's why there's some interesting options this week. Rashad Bateman, Michael Wilson, Tyler Lockett, because we need these options this week. Talked about Alec Pierce. We need these kinds of options this week, given how many buys we have and how many games are headed into the toilet, where it's going to be very difficult to justify playing a Roma Dunze this week. Jordan Addison, like, you don't know why. Even like, this isn't the week to play Noah Brown. This is a home game where they're 10-point favorites.
Right.
This is a Brian Robinson week, right? So it's tough to find. We talked about the Browns receivers. It's hard to get excited about these Browns receivers playing Pittsburgh. So, and then we have all these buys, and like, wait, at what point?
Who do we actually play?
How am I going to fill this roster out? There are some options. There's Jalen McMillan's going to be back for the Bucs with Mike Evans, so that's a totally different offense
Mhm.
with McMillan in the Godwin role and Mike Evans out there. So I'm very interested to see what happens with that. I'm interested to see the DeVito connection with
Sure.
Neighbors. Also, DeVito could be a Wan'Dale Robinson fan, right? He could that could it makes sense. A backup quarterback comes in, decides he wants to check down a lot more, keep it short, keep it intermediate, keep it to Wan'Dale. So Wan'Dale could be an option this week. Don't love it, but they're at home, 5.5-point dogs. They're gonna have to be throwing the ball. DeVito to Wan'Dale, I can see that. Again,
Mhm.
these are when you have a lot of fantasy teams like I do, in a lot of deep leagues, a lot of 14-team leagues, a lot of leagues that start 3 receivers plus a couple flex
Right.
positions. I'm forced to go out and start to mine all these rosters and figure out, okay, I'm not playing any Patriots receivers this week. Like, there's just a lot of teams I can't play the receivers on. Am I going to play Adam Thielen?
Yeah.
No. I mean, this
Right.
feels like a Thielen week. This feels like Thielen and Kelce are the ones that even remotely get there with their average age of 35. Like, that's what makes sense this week is, yeah, but I can't play Thielen. I got to play someone with a little more juice than that. I'm going to play a Michael Wilson or an Alec Pierce before I play an Adam Thielen, and then watch Adam Thielen actually
Sure.
put up whatever 14 fantasy points. Very easy to see it. You close your eyes, you're like, yeah, okay. This is, yeah, Adam Thielen. All right. Yeah, okay.
Right. We saw it a few weeks last year.
Yeah.
But, I mean, what
I
you
can't
laid
do it though.
Yeah, well, I can't either. Well, because you think about the range of outcomes, and you at least want some little sparkle at the top end of range. Somebody who can get a deep ball, or otherwise be part of an offense that's going to have some success. But what the case you laid out actually makes me step back and say, whether we're talking about any of these underachieving receivers, Neighbors, Debo Samuel, we mentioned Jaden Reed. He's coming off a game with 17 pass attempts. That this isn't the week to say, are you going to bench these guys? Because you don't really have a choice.
No, you can't bench Debo.
Right.
Debo
Right.
also, he's getting healthier. He's been the one thing we talk about. We started off with Jaylen Waddle talk.
Yeah.
Jaylen Waddle had the strained quad in week 7.
Mm-hmm.
Now would be the time that he's back to 100%. Debo Samuel has been playing through multiple injuries the last few weeks. He's finally getting healthier. He's working his way through it. You can't bench Debo Samuel this week. It's not happening. You got to go with him. You
Right.
can't. We don't have the luxury this week. I mean, if you happen to avoid all these buys the way your roster is, then congratulations.
Right.
But most people are in a tricky situation. They're having to make some unfortunate drops right now too,
Yeah.
where you might have 3 or 4 buys and you're like, I need to win. There's situations where if you think you're going to make the playoffs and you didn't make a decision, am I going to drop a guy I don't want to drop, or am I going to start a guy and buy,
Mm-hmm.
or
Mm-hmm.
start a guy that I think is, a total zero?
Yeah. No,
Like
you're
I have that with a lot of my teams have a lot of these elite upside handcuff running backs.
right.
I have a lot of Blake Corum. I have a lot of Braylon Allen. I have a lot of Ray Davis. I don't want to drop these guys,
No. No.
but this
No.
week it's kind of tough.
Yeah. I'd love that you're outlining this strategy point that sometimes, well, you have to really weigh this because these backup running backs can change the outcome of your season. Now, granted, if going into this week you're 5-6, I mean, if you are in a must-win situation or not, and then that makes the decision for you. But otherwise, I think there's a great case to be made because we're always talking about upside. We're always talking about best case scenarios in fantasy football, and absolutely, you hold on because there's not that many. I mean, the list is not. There aren't that many running backs that would clearly be the number one back if the starter goes down in a good enough offense who have enough talent to actually matter. And then I think the
I think I
underrated
listed them
part,
all. Maybe add Trey
yeah,
Benson,
sure. I mean, it's a short list. Roshan Johnson, it's a short list.
Tyler
Uh,
Algier.
right, Tyler Algier.
Okay, that's
Jalen,
the list.
Sure, it's not long, and somebody else is going to snap these guys up if you drop them because we all understand the value. And the other thing I think that's underrated is when these guys come in, watch out for Isaiah Pacheco for this reason. When these guys come in, if hopefully his procedure wasn't too rough on him, that they're fresh. They're playing defenses that are ground down, and they're fresh. And that's why we remember D Brown. That's why we remember the running backs who just come on at the very end of the year and actually win champion. Tim Hightower, one just get in just in time. CJ Anderson did it one year. Just because they're actually fresh. They don't have to be that much better than the defense if they don't have the wear and tear of a whole season on them. I want to go back and talk about San Francisco really quick. I want to just tee this up because my brain runs away with itself, and I'd like to check with people who could tell me if I'm
I
lost
wouldn't know
in
what that's
reality.
like.
Right. Look, listen, I'm worried about San Francisco. I'm worried about their offense. I'm worried that Trent Williams is banged up. Brock Purdy's been on the injury report with a shoulder. You have George Kittle. Okay, hopefully he'll be back this week. I wonder if this is an offense that, again, going back to the offenses that we were going to count on in fantasy. San Francisco, what is their remaining schedule looking like here? They've got oh, my brain. Tampa, Seattle, Green Bay, Buffalo, Chicago, Rams, Miami, Detroit, week 17. Whew. So, Chicago, Buffalo, this game at Green Bay, I mean, those don't sound like great games. But and you can take this direction in any direction you want, but should people be worried about San Francisco? If not, what are you seeing that gives you hope?
Well, when there's offensive line injuries, that's not necessarily that bad for the passing game. It's usually bad for the running game. But with Christian McCaffrey, he's a unicorn, so he's not going to be as affected by that. Unless if it's a guy like David Montgomery, and they lose a bunch of offensive linemen, that's bad, really bad. But that's really the extent of it. Like, take Anthony Richardson. We talked about that earlier. Big pass rush for the Lions still, even without Hutchinson. Well, he's a guy that can get mobile and get out on the run and then buy time no matter what. So I'm not that worried about that. Brock Purdy, all he does is score fantasy points, right? I remember that there was a time when Anthony Richardson was ahead of Brock Purdy in Superflex Dynasty leagues. And there's still people that would probably rather have, especially after last week, rather have Anthony Richardson in a Superflex Dynasty league. A guy like Brock Purdy is beyond gold. That's the guy, man. You can always take advantage and go down the list of quarterbacks that are not going to be available in Superflex leagues. They're just not available for trade at all. Typically, you get down to the guy that was drafted in the 7th round, where for whatever reason people don't quite feel like is that good, but all he does is he's put up 20 fantasy points a game. Sometimes he's scrambling. What did he scramble for 40 yards? Look at this guy. I love him. I love Brock Purdy. So I trust Purdy, man. I don't care who the offensive line is. I don't care. I trust Purdy. They've also got great yak receivers. This isn't the problem is with, say, Arizona, is they're relying on Kyler Murray being accurate down the field and a great scheme. And if they don't get that, the passing game suffers that particular week. Not with San Francisco. These are yak guys, right? George Kittle is one of the best yak tight ends in the league. Deebo Samuel is one of the best yak receivers in the league. Mm-hmm. They've got 6'3" receivers like Juwan Jennings in the red zone. So I think that the overall talent on offense with Christian McCaffrey dump-offs out of the backfield, I think this is an offense that can't be thwarted. And the great thing that they're experiencing right now is that their defense has been hollowed out and they're forced to throw. They're forced to have to play faster. You want that because the Shanahan mentality is play slower.
Yeah.
Get your fullback on the field. When the scoreboard dictates it, you no longer have the ability to slow the game down, to lean on the run. You have to throw. You love to see that. There are teams that are being hurt by their defense. There are fantasy assets that are not as productive this year. The Vikings are the best example, mm-hmm. where Jefferson and Aaron Jones are being hurt by the Vikings defense. It's too good, dude.
Yeah. Kansas City is
too good. That's one of the problems with Jaylen Waddle is the Dolphins defense
coming on.
It's some of these games are just too good. So you'd rather the defense not be so good. So that's the beauty of the 49ers can't lose. because they've got a great quarterback, they've got great play calling, they've got great weapons, and the defense is degraded. So you look at the schedule, they go to Green Bay, as long as the weather's fine, that to me is a shootout. You go to Buffalo, as long as the weather's fine, that to me is a shootout. The one game on the schedule that I hate is this Bears game, and then at Miami is also not a great matchup. That's not
Right.
great because then you've got a Shanahan with a Shanahan disciple. Then you can see the game getting slowed down. Against Detroit, I'd love to see what Vegas has as a projected game total on
Right.
that.
Right.
Like, I think that at home against Detroit, they're going to have that's going to be a 50-point total.
Easy.
Watch
Yeah.
it happen. So that I'm not worried about. If you think about it that way. So I think I don't think you're selling these guys. It's a real bummer that Kittle. I had Kittle being the tight end one this year, and then he gets hurt. Like, it's so just, and then the guy that never gets hurt, is trending. He maybe could be Travis Kelce, right? Travis Kelce. He did it out last week, but he's had a bunch of great games, and if there's one guy that's probably going to get there in this Carolina Kansas City puke fest, it's going to be Travis Kelce. So
Yeah, I want to talk about Kelce, and I think you make a good case that
I wish it was Kittle.
yeah,
And
with Kittle, you just wonder now that the injury seal's broken, he's missed another game, and he's
yeah,
supposed to come back this week. But
you hate it.
you hate it because we're at that point in the year, and I believe San Francisco's already had their bye, so we're just at that point in the year. And I feel like what worries me about San Francisco, or why it's hard for me to let go of the worry, is just knowing that Kittle and Trent Williams are so important to this offense. But all the other structural stuff that you outlined can be
They're gonna
amplified,
have to bring the problem with Kittle.
multiplied.
They're gonna have to have him block more. With no Trent
Right,
Williams, is actually the one guy that really gets hurt by that is Kittle because he has to block more.
right, right,
And then you're gonna lose Kittle because he's such a good blocker. He's actually it hurts him.
right.
Right? He's betrayed by his own abilities. It's the same thing with, like I said, with Minnesota.
Vernon
They're
Davis back in the
betrayed by
day.
their
Yeah,
defense. Their defense is
yeah,
too good. He's too good of a blocker. It hurts him for fantasy football. Whereas a guy like Brock Bowers, like, oh my God. Like,
yeah,
this is the test for Brock Bowers. This is the test. Can they get any offense going at all against the Broncos? This will be a very interesting,
yeah,
but you're never benching Brock Bowers. It's I think Bowers and Kelce. This
yeah.
is kind of they're the
Maybe
ones that are
Trey
duking it
McBride.
out for the top tight end this year
Well,
in fantasy.
I'm gonna set up Kelce though, because I'll make I'll let you a chance to give you a chance to flesh that out. The last thing I wanted to say about San Francisco, and I have no idea what kind of fantasy spin to put on this, Matt. But you hear, and it can be ridiculous, and you just want to just swipe it away, get out of here with this stuff, right? But you hear the little whispers, chatters like, could Kyle Shanahan be on the hot seat? Could the 49ers fire Shanahan? And I'm not saying it's going to happen. All right. I'm not saying, oh, Kyle Shanahan is really on the hot seat. However, again, I want to go over their last 7 games. This team is 5-5. They should be like 8-2. I mean, they've lost. They in Baltimore have this talent for losing games that they have so many other ways that they could have won, but they still lose. These are the last 7 games left for them. Again, at Green Bay, at Buffalo, Chicago coming to San Francisco, the Rams coming to San Francisco, well, Santa Clara, going to Miami, then Detroit, and then going to Arizona. There's not a guaranteed win there, and it's not difficult to picture them going, I don't know, 2-5, finishing 7-10 with that schedule. And what happens on this team that's used to winning in the playoffs, going to the Super Bowl. It was unfinished business this year.
Well,
So,
yeah, you can certainly see them 5-7.
yeah. I mean, you can
So
see them.
that's a weird position. That's surreal.
Yeah.
49ers 5-7 with that roster? How?
Yeah, exactly. So we'll just put a pin in it. But let me make the con case on Kelce, and you can make the pro. Because I'm worried about Kelce again, like especially in a dynasty league. If I'm in a dynasty league and the trade deadline hasn't happened yet, man, I'm really thinking about getting out on Travis Kelce right now. Because
Mm-hmm.
I'm really thinking, like, I mean, even if I'm in first place, because I'm afraid, like we've been talking about, Matt, Kansas City is content to win ugly. Okay, Juju Smith-Schuster is now back. DeAndre Hopkins is there. Isaiah Pacheco is going to be back. And we know when Isaiah Pacheco is out there, they're content to give him the ball, 20 times. And now they have Kareem Hunt just to bolster the running game more. Their remaining schedule is Carolina, Vegas, the Chargers. Okay, that's fun. Cleveland, Houston. They play Pittsburgh in week 17. That could be
Oh, that is a bad schedule, dude.
that's terrible.
That is a terrible
So we're
schedule.
really and I mean Patrick Mahomes also, like,
No,
if
you're
anybody
right.
out
That
there
is
is
a
to
terrible schedule.
so
That's
re
much worse than the San Francisco schedule.
so I feel like I see lots of 3 for 19. I mean, I feel like Kansas City's back on just slow in the driveway, get the number 1 seed, now they can preserve Kelce. I feel like, I hate to say it, but I think Kelce's spike in the middle of the season was out of necessity, not because Kelce's back, but because that's what they had to build the offense around, and now they have options, and now they don't even need the offense to be that good to win. But I didn't mean to bring you down here with me.
No, I think McBride will outscore him. Like I said, I think this is a McBride week. So I think McBride outscores Kelce the rest of the season. I think Bowers does. We'll see with Kittle. Again, we're going to see how much he's blocking. We're going to see how healthy he is. And then, so it's going to be a battle there for tight end 3. David Njoku's a possibility.
And Njoku's still going to be fine, right?
Right. Taysom Hill, 40
Taysom Hill
points.
might be the number 1 tight end for the rest of the season.
Taysom Hill he's in points per game, he's already ahead of him. So if Taysom Hill continues this, I just think it's with Taysom Hill, it's so game plan specific and what packages they have planned for the particular defenses. We'll see what happens. But if they had this in Taysom Hill, why didn't they bust it out with Spencer Rattler? Right. So
he was hurt.
This is what I'm worried about.
He had like a rib injury. But listen, the thing about Taysom Hill is that as much as Sean Payton loved Taysom Hill, and as much as Dennis Allen loved Taysom Hill, I think Darren Rizzi loves him even more.
I would love to see more Taysom Hill. Taysom Hill's
how could we even see more than we saw last week? It's the 7 carries for 138 and 3 touchdowns, 8 catches for 50 yards and a fumble, threw an interception,
Let's go.
returned a kick. Really? And there's no, I mean, this goes back to something we were talking about earlier in the show. Nobody should ever say that's impossible in the NFL. If you've watched the NFL for long enough, you should have the humility to know that you should not dismiss any possibility, because this is the nature of the NFL now, upside wins championships, outliers, things that you would say the previous data predicts this will not happen. You should not act as if those things are impossible, because every year, every week we see those things, and those are often the most important ones to get out ahead of.
But is Sean McVay in next week 13? Is he going to look at all that tape and whenever they see Taysom Hill in there, are they just going to collapse the defense and not let him do it?
I mean,
that's the question. The NFL will adjust, and sometimes they can adjust very quickly. Ronnie Brown can, throw and run for touchdowns out of the Wildcat for like 2 weeks.
Right.
So we'll see. We'll see, man. I don't quite trust it. To say he's a top 5 tight end, for fantasy, but it's close.
Well, what I do trust is,
I mean, basically right after Njoku, it's like, I guess Taysom Hill.
Well, and what I do trust is that they will give him the enough opportunity to be that guy. But you're right, defenses can adjust. Defenses can get the drop on them if it's predictable. And we did see this Saints offense look like they were going to keep everybody on their heels for 2 weeks, and then they were very predictable. And the worst thing you can be in the NFL is predictable, no matter how good your players are. Okay, final long-awaited visit to the couch for the Podfather, and you mentioned player profiler. What you all have built over there has shape the way we talk about fantasy football. It's awesome. And now we can talk about other things as we go off the rails here. I guess where I would start, there's so many places we could start here on the couch. But I would just say, if you weren't a fantasy football baron, a fantasy football impresario, Matt, what do you think you would be doing as your bargain with 2024 America to have the right to exist?
Wow. That's a good question. Man, you know what I'm doing right now? I just passed my safe soccer certificate.
Oh,
so I'm a certified coach.
Awesome.
So I would be a soccer coach. My daughter got really involved with soccer in the last few years, and the best part is that she was terrible. She was not getting any playing time at like the lowest level, and then that team dissolved because a bunch of girls quit and they just were like, we're not doing it. And then we were
Mhm.
like, okay,
Mhm.
so, off to the next activity, whatever. And she's like, no, no, no. I still want to, this is fun. I love doing this.
Oh, great.
And we were like, well, okay, but we don't know where you can play. And so we called around and talked to people, and we found a spot at a club for her, in this, developmental group that they
Mhm.
had. And, she just kind of threw herself into it and got just incrementally better and wanted to practice with me. And I couldn't believe it. Because it's like, it's
Yeah.
on, like, if you're like, that's the greatest thing.
Oh,
I
God.
mean, there's not a lot of kids that listen to these kinds of podcasts, but
Right.
I mean, if you're like a 12-year-old, like, you make your dad's day 100x,
Mhm.
joy. And that if you just say, hey dad, can we go play X sport right now?
Right, right.
I'm almost every dad would be like, yes, let's go. Like, I will clear my schedule
Sure.
to make it happen. Like, even a few weeks ago, she was like, yeah, I want to practice shooting. Like, I'm not happy with my shooting, whatever. And I was like, okay, we're there. The
Right.
car's packed. I
Yeah.
know where we're going. I know the field we're going to, all these things. And then, because I'm just like a rookie coach,
Mhm.
right? I'm just getting going with my certification. I had too many balls and I had too many reps in a row, and she kind of hurt her knee a little bit. She kind of
Mm.
had a sore knee the next day, and couldn't practice. And then I'm like devastated. I'm like, oh my god, I had too many repetitions, and it was a real failure of a coach. We needed to mix it up more. I needed to take, more visualizations. It's like you talked about. Remember you talked about with Anthony
Yeah.
Richardson? We needed to go a burst and then
Right.
talk about it and
Right.
rest or look at tape, and then a burst again instead of, just so repetitive. And I was like, I failed you as a coach. I'm like, I'm ashamed of myself. Your actual coach for your actual club. They can't know this was my fault that you're missing. I'm ashamed. This is terrible. So then I was like, well, that was a lesson. That was a coaching lesson to you not do that repetitive. But it's like, now this is like a guinea pig situation. So yeah, I think I just love sports, man. I
Yeah.
love sports. We had this when I was a kid. We
Mhm.
don't we didn't have any iPhones. We didn't have any devices. We had all analog. I even remember TVs. You had to get up from the
Sure.
couch and turn the dial to change the
Adjust
station.
the vert hold and the horizontal hold, and maybe even adjust the antenna.
That's right. And yeah, and the knob had come off, and we had a pair of
Pliers.
pliers. Do you know what I'm
Yeah.
talking about?
Oh, God, yeah.
You do?
Of
You guys
course.
had to have pliers to change the
Oh,
station and
yeah.
turn the TV on. So there's a pair of pliers on top of the TV to turn it on. So we had to invent things to do as kids.
Mhm.
And my buddy just texted me out of nowhere. He goes, "What kind of ball did we use for hanger hockey?" So we took coat hangers, and then we made hockey sticks, and then we had like a wiffle ball or something. And then
Mhm.
in the basement, we played hockey with these hanger hockey sticks. And he's like, "What was the ball we used?" And the thing that kills me, Sig, is I
Mhm.
couldn't remember. It
Mm.
was like one of those wiffle balls with just the holes evenly all around it.
Mhm.
Maybe that was the ball we used, but I'm like, I have to tell you, I don't remember the exact. I'm like, why you're asking me this, I don't know. But he's the same guy that made a T-shirt for me for our football card games. We invented fantasy
Right,
football
right.
where we spread the cards out on the bed and we drafted,
Mhm.
and then like sort of like Dungeons and Dragons kind of
Right.
talked through how the games would play out, who would win and why. Bruce Smith with the sack fumble, all those, all that. So I've always been drawn to sports, even when I
Yeah.
had a corporate job. Yeah, in the back of my mind, I was like, I'm not productive enough because of this goddamn fantasy baseball,
Yes. Yes,
football,
yes, yes, yes.
and then just sports in general. So you have to follow your passion and find a way. And it seems like, and I was like, well, what is the process to become a soccer coach? Because, I'm on the sideline, thinking about all these things I would do, plays I would call, people I would play in certain positions. And then so I went to the U.S. Soccer website. That's the beauty of, so we harken back to our childhood, and hey,
Mhm.
analog was cool, but it's a lot of things seemed out of reach if you didn't know the right people
Right.
or have even the knowledge of where to find the knowledge. Whereas with the internet, it's so much better in some ways that I'm like, how do I become a coach? And then it's like, okay,
Here's
then
how
you
you do
can
it.
do all these online
Right,
classes,
right, right, right.
and it takes you through the steps where there used to be that so many different careers seem like total black boxes that were not even possible, whether it be like learning an instrument,
Mhm.
well, all these different things. So that is where, I wouldn't go back. I think that we got through it. We did a good job, getting through the 80s. We, alive. We made it. Going to school with no seatbelts. But so I think that's fine, and we had a good time, and now we can enjoy the internet.
Yeah, appreciate what you can appreciate about the time that you're in, and also what you can appreciate about nostalgia, what you're nostalgic for. But I love youth sports. I've gotten the chance now. I got pressed into duty as a youth baseball coach, under 10 kid pitch, crude version of baseball. I've done basketball, and Noah is at a Waldorf school. I don't know if you know about Waldorf education. I could evangelize about Waldorf education. It's follow your heart, creative. I could go on and on about it. It's the antidote, I think, to what a lot of people don't like about not just public education, just the education in the United States right now. But I'm in New Orleans, so like they get their brains beaten in the middle school basketball. Like they'll lose like 36-4. We get excited when they get a basket or a rebound, but it takes all the pressure off the kids and the coaches. It takes all the pressure because it's really just like, let's try this out. Is this for me? This could be fun. But the thing that strikes me doing youth sports coaching, Matt, is that all the stuff they told us when we were kids about youth sports is true. It's all true. It's all true. Like building character, teamwork,
Oh, for
what
sure.
what what you learn about applying yourself, learning the joy of participation, just learning the joy of getting to be part of something, all of it. It
The
all actually,
confidence. Yeah,
all,
just personal
oh
confidence.
my gosh, I could tell a long
It's
story
big.
here. There's a story I could tell about when Noah was doing flag football, and he was on the same team as Tyrann Mathieu's son, also named Noah. And then they were on opposing teams. And there's a lot of, I could tell, but absolutely confidence, life-changing moments. You can watch life-changing moments, almost like you feel the divine, the presence of the divine, knowing that your kid is going to be a different person after this moment. Because within sports, and you talk about having a passion for sports, and absolutely my origin story here, a couple of things you touched on. Number one is being at your job and just wanting to do fantasy stuff or research sports instead of your job, and then saying, well, I just need to make that my job if that's possible. And then the other is the barriers to entry, that we're even sitting here right now talking to each other, and this is some sort of product that we can commodify, is because we live in this time when you can distribute something to the whole world for almost no cost at all, which was when we were young, like the gatekeepers were everything. And now there aren't gatekeepers. Well, in some ways, but sports is perfect. And when I say sports is perfect, what I mean is within the boundary of the sidelines or whatever, something happens. We understand what happened. There's like an actual outcome that we can understand. It's supposed to be fair. And compared to life, my mom, rest in peace, she would always say, Siggy, no one ever said life is fair. Uh, it seems like sports are mostly fair,
Oh, yeah.
I mean, compared to life,
And
there's
we
actual
compare when
referees.
we complain when it's not a meritocracy, like in the NFL, it takes Adam Thielen 4 years,
Right,
and that's just, and then when guys actually like a Jalen Coker get opportunities in Carolina, it's amazing. It's like,
right,
wow, the guy from Holy Cross, undrafted, gets an opportunity. This is crazy. This didn't
right.
used to happen. Even in the NFL, it used to take them longer. So it's getting even more meritocratic. But yes,
And on
in
the field
every
during the
other walk
game.
of life,
Yeah.
it's more about who you know and where you got started
What
and
you can
what
get away
trajectory
with.
you're on. And with sports, game knows game,
Yeah.
and that's it.
And it's a sanctuary. And it's a sanctuary to get to be part of this fantasy football world, and Matt and you and so many other people who've graced me my presence here on the couch uh, have contributed so much to this world that we get to be part of and play in. But it's all about the people that are listening right now, all about the people we serve, because we would have a chance to bail out on those jobs that we didn't really feel like doing and do this instead without them. So all of you, thank you always for your precious time. It is a privilege to serve because you are so classy.